Hello everyone, how's everyone doing today? In today's video, I want to talk about 5 ways of effective communication in teams. So, how many of you have been in the situation where you're trying to communicate to your teams, but no one understands what you're talking about? Or you're communicating and people are looking at their mobile phones or checking emails or on their Slack channels because they know whatever you're saying doesn't make sense most of the times. That's because you've developed a pattern of not clearly communicating your thoughts to people. So I've been in that situation before. And after some research and experiences, real life experiences, I found out there are 5 effective ways you can communicate with teams and establish credibility. So these are the 5 ways to communicate effectively. So the first way of effective communication is paying attention to non-verbal communication patterns. So based on research, about 93% of our daily communication is nonverbal, which includes body language, tone of voice, your body gestures. So it's really important to pay attention to these nonverbal cues within your team. So some ways you can improve on nonverbal communication is give everyone a chance to express their opinions, practice active listening, then look for different patterns in terms of their body language, their face when you're communicating. Because if they're like this, that means they're probably trying to think what you're trying to say. Think about what you're trying to say, and if they're happy, that means they like what you're saying. So pay attention to those non-verbal cues in your teams. It's really, really important. And also maintain eye contact when you're communicating with someone, because it makes the other person understand that you are listening to them and that you really value their opinion as well. The second thing you want to think about is intercultural communication. So currently, we work in a diverse work environment with people from different cultures and regions and different countries. So the way we communicate, the different words we use, different phrases we use is going to be different based on these regions, and we need to be cognizant of that fact. So, for example, when I was working in a company, I was in this huge big meeting, and I was tasked with this really complicated job or task to perform. And at the end of the meeting, my project manager said, "May the force be with you," right? And remember, this is when I just came to the US, so I was not used to all these idioms and phrases. So the next thing I did after this meeting was I went and Googled what does May the Force be with you? And I didn't know it was a Star Wars reference because I've never seen a Star Wars movie, right? So keep those things in mind that people from different cultures and regions may not understand idioms and phrases. So be clear on different things you tell people. And also, idioms and phrases as well. Like, for example, you could say, this product is the cash cow of the company. It does not mean you have a real cow, but you mean that the product is really important in generating revenue. So those are some things you want to keep in mind. And intercultural communication also is not only in terms of the verbal part of it, it's also in written communication as well. For example, when you assign tasks to people who are working in different countries, make sure you mention time zones. We fail to understand that different countries have different time zones, right? So when you say, I expect this task to be completed by 9 p.m., you need to mention whether it's 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, Eastern Standard Time, Indian Standard Time, or French Standard Time, right? So you need to ensure the time zones. There's this great book by Richard Lewis called When Cultures Collide, and he talks about so many different things to be cognizant of when working with an intercultural, uh, diverse work environment. So I highly recommend checking out that book. So that's intercultural communication. The third thing you need to think about is establish clarity, goals, and expectations with your team. So this is the thing. Without knowing what you're supposed to accomplish in your team, it's hard to expect something out of your team. Without giving them assigned deadlines and tasks and put clear ownership and responsibilities, there's going to be ambiguity on who is going to do which task and when that's be completed. And then you cannot complain that, you know what, this task wasn't completed on time, right? So set clear deadlines, expectations, goals, and clarity. So that is really important to communicate when you're working with a large team as well. The fourth thing you want to think about is establish effective feedback loops. So when we talk about feedbacks, I know there's so many different feedback types and science behind it, but on a high level, you have two types of feedbacks. One is proactive feedback, and the next one is reactive feedback. So what's proactive feedback? Proactive feedback is when you ask someone proactively feedback for what you did. So say for example, I could go and ask my manager saying, "Hey, I think the meeting went really well. So how did you think I did my presentation in the meeting? Is there something which I have to work on?" So that is an example of proactive feedback. Then you have reactive feedback. Reactive feedback is getting feedback on something you did and someone else approaches you and gives you feedback involuntarily. So for the same example, your manager could come and say, "Hey Raj, uh, your presentation was really good, but one thing you can keep in mind is they don't need to know this information. You can stress more on this kind of information in your next meeting." So that is a reactive feedback. So those are some feedback loops as a leader or as a person working in team you need to establish to have effective communication. And then finally, the fifth way of communicating is use safety language. So what do I mean by that? How many of you have been in the situation where you're working on some task, then all of a sudden your manager comes by you and says, "Hey, can you just finish this task for me by end of day today? You know, I'm really busy. It'd be really great." And he or she just moves on by after telling you to complete this task. And then you're taken by shock and you immediately say yes without even thinking. And then you end up putting your priority task in the backlog and then start working on another person's task. How many of you have been in this situation before? The answer would be about 75 to 80% of the times, right? That's because we are caught by surprise and we don't know how to react to it or react to situations like this. This is when safety language helps. Whenever you are caught by surprise in a meeting or someone says, "Hey, can you do this? Hey, would you be able to explain this better?" Or they say, "Hey, finish this task at this day." What you could do is instead of just immediately committing to it and saying, "Yes, I'll do it," ask clarifying questions and use phrases like "could be," "might be," and those kind of filler phrases to prevent yourself from committing to something which you don't really want to do. So, say for example, a person says, "Hey, uh, this is the path we're going to take for this project." And if you're disagreeing with that, you need to tell the person in such a way that, "Hey, that seems like a really good idea, but I might disagree in that one point which you just mentioned. If you want, we can discuss about it," right? So I use the word "I might." Or you could say, if someone asks you, "Hey, do you think this is the right way to do this thing?" Instead of saying, "Yes, this is the right way," or "This is not the right way," you could say, "My experience being in the situation has been that when I do this particular thing, another thing actually happens," right? So I use the phrase "my experience has been." So use phrases like this to not committing yourself to things until you have more time to process it. So that's the power of safety language. And for more information about all these things, I've blogged about it and I've wrote articles about it, so you can check out my website. So there you go. Those are the 5 ways for effective communication within teams. If you like this video, please hit subscribe. on my YouTube channel. I'll be posting more videos like this as I keep saying, and my goal is to share all these tips and tricks to make you successful when you work in teams as well. So hope you find this video useful, and stay safe, and I will meet you in my next video. Thanks for listening.